agenda item number 1. There we get a copy of the last meeting's minutes.
Second.
Motion by Bob Carter, second by Nancy Henner. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Minutes are approved. Agenda item number 2, JJTCC Citizen Review Committee. We have probably don't have an update because we haven't met recently, right, Ms. Scott? The chairs of the comments. So there are several citizen committee members in the audience I see. So. Agenda item number 3, RQAW status report.
Very good.
Sir, that's you, I think.
All right, let me grab my notebook here. Did you all receive a copy of the RQAW Vice agenda? Okay. Well, for the record, I'm Joe Marack with RQAW Corporation, and with me today is Jim Escamilla from Vice and Associates. And I'll go through this agenda here to give you a little update on what we've done the last couple of weeks. The first thing I want to talk about is the review of existing buildings and sites that we've been asked to take a look at. And I have on the computer, you have a handout of a PowerPoint presentation that I'm trying to call up on my computer here. I'm still kind of logging in. But Signature Associates, a few months ago, was asked to put together a list of available sites that were of adequate square footage and appropriate sites for a potentially co-located juvenile transition center and jail, and also look at some existing industrial sites, industrial buildings that could be utilized to renovate or convert into a new facility. So we have taken those sites that Signature and Associates had given to us, and we have done an initial evaluation of those sites and buildings. Now, I won't get into the gory detail of each of these sites, but what I want to talk about primarily is the ones that we have eliminated. Because obviously you go through and there are a number of sites that had issues that we could not overcome. And what we'll start on your handout while we're waiting for the my computer stuff. We don't have So when you do a function FA? Yep. There you go. Aha. Love it when a plan comes together. This first slide here is from, again, Signature Associates, and there were 5 buildings that they gave us to evaluate. One of those buildings, number 5 at 2901 Esta Street, is no longer available. So that is off the list. It has been purchased. The other 4 sites are 1041 Keating Avenue, 1450 East Laketon, which is also known as the Roundy's Warehouse, 2051 Harvey Street, which is actually right around the corner from the Laketon Avenue site, and then the property on Oak Avenue. What we've done, we went out Monday this week, we went out and toured all of these facilities, and we've performed a cursory evaluation of them. So the next slide is a copy from the Signature Associates pages that they gave us, and then we've added 2 columns to each of these building sites, listing the advantages and disadvantages of each of the sites. Then you will notice in the far left-hand column there's this kind of a reddish, coral-colored color shaded in on the left-hand column. The ones that are shaded in are the ones that are no longer under consideration for various reasons, and we'll go through that. The first site at 1041 Keating Avenue, that is off the list for further consideration for a couple of reasons. Number one, the square footage of the building is too small, and the height of the building is too short. We're looking for, because we have a critical height we're looking for minimum 18-foot ceiling heights, and something in the low 20s is much better, because we're going to be in the cell blocks in the jail. We're going to be stacking cells on top of one another, so we need about at least 17 feet for that. The ceiling in the day rooms are going to be between 18 and 22 feet, and the standards dictate that our recreation areas have to have minimum 18-foot ceiling heights. So there's two things structurally that we have to look for in these buildings. One is we at least have part of the building a tall structure to accommodate recreation spaces and cell blocks. And the other thing is we have to look at the column base spacings. And some of these industrial buildings, you know, the columns are 40 feet apart, 50 feet apart. That is fantastic. Some of them are like 20 feet apart, and that is very problematic. In the case of Keating Avenue, the primary reasons why this building doesn't work very well is it doesn't give us the structural height that we need, and the column base spacings are way too close together. So it doesn't really work for us. So there's no reason to look at this particular site any further. The second site is the Laketon Avenue site, also known as the Roundy's Warehouse. This one does work very well. Almost the entire building has 32-foot structural height. The base spacings are 40 and 50 feet on center. Very conducive. The building is very sound structurally. A lot of the building exterior are actually masonry. We can say the building has good bones to it. It's wide open, not a lot of demolition and things like that have to occur to make the building usable. So that one we think is worthy of further consideration. Site number 3 is Harvey Street. One of the problems there too was low ceiling heights. Column base spacing was too, the columns were too close together. And then this building also, being an industrial building, it had a lot of metal siding. It wasn't insulated very well, and the type of construction it was really wasn't conducive to renovation in a changed use. So we don't think that building should be considered any further. 1700 Oak Avenue is the old hospital. And that's a very interesting building. It took a long time to go through that building. And but it's about 205,000 square feet, which is plenty. I mean, that has plenty of square footage. But the ironic thing about it is, if we use the hospital, even though it has a lot of square footage in it, we're still going to have to add space to the hospital to accommodate the tall areas that we need, cell blocks and the recreation areas. But the thing that makes the hospital interesting is that it's in generally pretty good condition. There's a lot of space that could be just simply you don't have to go in and completely gut things. There's existing rooms and offices. You can maybe change the finishes and modify the lighting a little bit and work with it. Structurally, the hospital's in good shape. Mechanically, electrically, it's aged. But that's mechanically, electrically, there's a lot of mechanical, electrical in the hospital. I mean, so there's no shortage of it. The downside is it's kind of a monster. I mean, there's got to be 82 mechanical rooms in that building, and our concern is we don't know yet how much we need to come in and remove to make whatever's left usable, and the expense involved in that. And one of the things that is a concern to us in the long term is what would be the ongoing operating cost of a building like that for the county. Is our mechanical electrical cost going to be high enough that we really can't afford to operate that long term? But there's enough there that there's a lot of cool stuff about that site. Especially the way it's laid out. There's one wing, I guess it was the obstetrics wing, would be possibly very conducive to the Juvenile Transition Center, the way it's laid out today. And it is a physical separation from the rest of the building. And the kitchen area is right in between where the jail might be and where the juvenile transition center might be. So there's a lot of cool things about it that are certainly worth investigating. So the old hospital, we think, is on the list to stay to do further review, because there's just enough things about it that are kind of intriguing. Site number 5, 2901S, this again was off the market, so it wasn't available. So from an existing building standpoint, we have two that have survived this first round, and that's the Roundy's building and the hospital. And so we plan on doing further investigation on those two. Likewise, there were 11 vacant sites that we took a look at. And we've done the same kind of evaluation of elimination, basically. And these ranged all the way from the north side over in the new industrial commercial park, about 6 miles north of town. I think the farthest south site was over on Broadway Avenue. And or everything in between is as far east as East Apple Street. So moving on to the vacant sites. The first 3 sites, 2139 Mill Iron, 3536 East Apple, and 2210 Whitehall Road, we've eliminated all of those because they're just too small. From a site, these are 5 and 6 acre sites, and you have to consider the building alone is going to be 4 acres. I mean, it's a big building. So when you take into account parking and a lot of the other support spaces. So we think that we really shouldn't be looking at a site anything less than basically 12 acres. So anything significantly less than that, we've taken off the list. Site number 4 is the Muskegon County Business Park North. We've left that on the list because obviously it's brand new. There's brand new roads, brand new utilities. Everything is there. It's kind of a great site. So that is certainly a possibility. The one question that we would have for the county is sometimes people don't like investing in a business park like that and then taking certain lots of it off the tax rolls by putting a government building on it. So I don't know where we are in that kind of consideration, but the sites are great. I mean, I would hope that somebody would be moving in there pretty soon because it's an excellent location. But the one downside we found to that was, of all the sites, it was the longest trip to the courthouse. That's the real downside to that. Is it's only 6 miles or so, but it takes a long time to get there. And I think you're looking at, even though we're going to be using technology to a great extent to reduce travel and reduce visits back and forth to the courthouse, it's still a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of traffic and so forth to go through between the two. So that would be a concern there. Item number 5 is 414 West Broadway. That's a former industrial site. It has been cleaned up. I like that site a lot. It's 20 acres. It's surrounded basically by 4 streets. Utilities are there. There's other industrial and some commercial properties around it. But it's a very buildable site. Pretty good location, fairly close proximity as far as travel and such to the courthouse. So we think that one is definitely on the list for future consideration. Site number 5, 1929 Holton Road. We didn't like that site because it has adequate square foot or adequate acreage and so forth, but after you get off the roadways, the terrain drops off about 10 or 12 feet. And it looks like it has the potential of being kind of low and wet, and the majority of that site is, I felt was just somewhat suspect to me. So we didn't like that site at that particular location. Site 7 was Apple Avenue. This is pretty far east on Apple, and it was kind of interesting. The vacant lot on Apple Avenue is at site number 7 is actually around the corner from site number 2, 3536 East Apple. They're not really related to each other. They're on different streets. They're front on different streets, but they actually are contiguous sites. So we have a 5.99 acre site that we kind of discounted, and then we have a 13.42 acre site that is right next to it. So this would lend itself to possibly the jail being on one of the parcels and the Juvenile Transition Center on a separate parcel, and you actually enter these two sites from a different road. So they could be facilities that are back to each other, but have an absolutely identifiable entrance, distinct from each other, which was kind of interesting. The one downside to that site is that the large site, the 13.5-acre site, is actually about 1/8 of a mile off the road. And so there's an easement that goes back to this parcel, but there's no road built yet, and the utilities have not been extended back there. So in this process, we would have to estimate what would the cost be to build this access and the utilities. So we think this site is one that will be considered further, and we will do that once we figure out what these buildings look like and how big they are. We can develop the cost of what it would cost to develop that site. Site number 8, Sherman Boulevard. That site was discounted because it was just too small. Site number 9 on Austin Street, again, was too small. Site number 10 on Harvey Street, it was too small, and the shape of the site is somewhat irregular. It would be hard to put a large building or 2 large buildings on. And number 11, the Seaway Industrial Park, on the Signature Associates report, it said 12 acres available. There's 12 acres available in about 8 different lots, but they're not all contiguous because some lots have been purchased already. So you can't really mass enough of the sites together to be big enough. So that one really doesn't work. I mean, there's some great properties down there, but we can't get them all together to big enough property. So in short, we've got basically 3 sites and 2 buildings to have further serious consideration of. And with that, we'd also ask if anybody knows of any additional sites that might be available now that might not have been available at the time that this Signature Associates report was given to us. We'll be happy to take a look at those.
Yes, is 14 West Broadway in Muskegon Heights?
I don't know if it's in the city limits of Muskegon Heights or not. It probably is.
Yes, it is.
It probably is, yeah.
The old Bennett Vault, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah, it's a 20-acre site, and like I said, I like that site a lot. It's been cleaned up. Somebody put a lot of effort into cleaning the site up from what it was, and it's got utilities on all 4 sides of it, and good transportation access to the courthouse.
Thank you.
At some point, and I don't know at what point, are you going to do the same study and look at the existing location and the vacant property around this building?
We have looked at, we've done some work in looking at the existing building here. We've not been asked specifically to look at any other sites other than if we do an addition to the existing building, which is one of the things we will do. There's maybe three directions you could go with it, and we will analyze that as part of renovation and expansion of the existing site.
So that'll be done, but just not yet.
Yes, it has partially been done already.
Okay, it's not off the table.
That's correct. Yeah, because in our analysis, there's basically 3 basic approaches. One is a completely new facility or facilities on a new site, renovation and expansion of the existing jail at the existing site in some fashion, and then the conversion of an existing building into a jail and juvenile transition center. So those are 3 distinct approaches, and all of them will be giving equal consideration. That's a good question. I guess I just kind of assumed in my head that.
I'm sorry. Other questions from the committee at this point?
The one thing I might add, and a good segue into the interview with the Juvenile Transition Center staff. I'm going to request, I don't know if approval or permission or whatever, one of the things that came up through the interviews with the Juvenile Transition Center is on the concept of converting existing buildings. What would suit the Juvenile Transition Center would be an abandoned school building. Because of the mission and a lot of the things that they do at the Juvenile Transition Center, if there was a, not too big a school, but a smaller elementary school or something of that nature that was available, we should maybe look at that. And I understand there might be a few in town, and okay, maybe more than a few, but I would like to ask the committee if we could have maybe Signature Associates obtain information from the school administration on what sites might be available, because it's kind of intriguing, because a lot of the things that the Juvenile Transition Center does as far as their programs would be really well served in classroom type settings. And so I'd like to put that on the table for consideration, but I think it'd be worth at least investigation.
Okay, we'll take that in the form of a motion. Motion by Mr. Mahoney, second by Bob Carter, to instruct Signature Associates to compile a list of available school buildings. No problem.
Thank you. That would have a really great dimension.
We still got to vote on it. Any discussion on it? Mr. Snyder?
Well, not just available, but I would assume there are some that could be made available as well.
That's correct.
Okay. I guess you need to explore the concept to whatever extent we just make it work. Other discussion?
The only concern that I have about it, if there's a school, usually it's in a residential neighborhood. And this would, if it were to be located in a residential neighborhood, there would be a lot of traffic in that area, in a residential area. So that would be something that I think we should consider.
Yeah, I think that's a consideration. Having a lot of traffic around it could be good, could be bad. You know, could go either way, but that's exactly right. Because one of the things that we found, again, moving into the Juvenile Transition Center, we sat down, we received, I think, probably all or most all the data requests we got from them over the last couple of days. And we sat down and had interview with Paul and the Transition Center staff and court staff and so forth. The first question I asked, because I read the study that was done in 2006, and it was entitled Juvenile Detention Center. And then, you know, you're talking about the Juvenile Center now as a Juvenile Transition Center. The first question I ask is, okay, what's the difference? What's happened between 2006 and 2012? And it was very enlightening, and it was like the sky opened up, and I mean, it was a great first question. And so the mission of the Juvenile Transition Center, I think, is a little bit different than what was originally studied in 2006. I think the focus in 2006 was primarily detention. The focus now is not as much or as strong on detention. Detention is a component, but there's going to be a staff secure or a treatment component to this that you're not really doing as much now as you would like, in large part because of the facility limitations. And there was also discussion of creating a day treatment program in the future. And what a day treatment program would be is, let's say kids get out of school, maybe the school bus drops them off at the facility, and they are occupied with programming and classes and things like that in the evening before they go home. And this would be what's called a non-residential program. So detention is a residential program. Staff secure, or kind of an open, medium secure, staff secure facility is residential. But the day treatment will be non-residential, so the kids come and go. So that's where the school kind of comes in, because it's the perfect setting for something like that. So, and those things weren't even part of the original program in 2006. So we haven't churned all the data and everything, but the direction that it looks like this thing is going is roughly 16 beds or so of detention and 16 beds or so of the staff secure area, and then maybe accommodate a day treatment of approximately 24 kids at some point in the future. And that was largely a discussion. To summarize a 3-hour discussion in 3 minutes, that's pretty much the direction that it looks like it's going. So that was the difference between the detention and the transition center. Now that brings up an interesting dynamic, is that if the juvenile treatment is more than detention, and there's treatment components, and there's kids coming here from school and so forth, then it creates an interesting dynamic with how does that get located, co-located with the jail. You know, how we do that has to be very carefully treated. So just something to throw out there now. And I don't know how much anybody has discussed the mission of the transition center versus the mission of the jail and how that might work. But I'm just throwing that out there now because that's something that we need to process and be very careful how we handle it through this pre-design and charrette process.
Other questions or comments before we vote on the motion? All in favor of pursuing the school building concept, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, the transition center, we've received a lot of the data. We're working on an architectural program for that, and we'll probably be back with the transition center staff in a week or so with an updated architectural program, which would be, an architectural program is a listing of all the spaces and the square footages and so forth for the building. On the jail data, I understand there is a lot of data for me to take back with me today. I don't know how long that's going to take us to go through, but it's quite a bit of information. We also did receive a copy of the 2006 study we were looking for last time, and we got a copy of that a day or two afterwards. So there's just a lot of information there that we're going to be processing over the next couple of weeks. So that's pretty good. When we get into the data and go through it and start putting together some trends, then we will get with the sheriff and his staff about scheduling some interviews to talk about the data and trends and things of that nature. So that's probably a week or two out still. One thing too, I saw some emails about, I think this was from the Citizens Review Committee, frequently asked questions about the jail. And I've seen that question, I don't know who from that committee's here, but all of those questions that have been asked is something that we will be compiling answers to all of those questions through this data request and through these interviews. So as we get done, when we're done with the charrette and done with the final report, we will have detailed answers to all of those questions and probably many more as well. So if there's any concern about that, like I said, I saw some emails about that, but we've got that well in hand. On the charrette, we had, at the last meeting, we talked about a tentative date of August 14th through 17th for the charrette. And I'm starting to think I would like to move that charrette a little later, if that's acceptable. And I'm kind of proposing maybe the week of August 28th, moving it back 2 weeks instead of the 14th. And for a couple of reasons, but one is the amount of information from the jail is going to take us a while to go through, and it would allow both us and the county to be better prepared for the charrette. So I don't know who all is involved in making that decision from the county standpoint, but I would like to suggest or recommend that we set a target date of 8/28 instead of 8/14 for the charrette. And we still haven't done anything as far as exactly where we're going to hold it yet, and that gives us a little more time to establish that.
I would suggest we do that, follow that recommendation to go to August 28th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Mahoney, second from Ms. Wilkins to push the charrette date out to August 28th. Discussion?
Yeah, are you going to update the other 2 dates then that follow subsequent to that charrette?
Yes.
What about public notification of the charrette itself? I've talked to a lot of folks about I felt would really be interested in having them attend. Either we should have some public announcement somehow versus call every time we make a date change.
Yeah, well, I think we'll definitely make a big effort to notify everybody, because the thing about setting the date and setting a location for it, we're not very far. We talked before about maybe having something at the college, having a location available there. But we still need to finalize that. Once we do finalize that, then we can go ahead and start getting some notices out.
Well, go ahead, Mr. Cohen.
Because I was talking to Mary earlier about this, are you going to pick the location, or are you expecting us to come up with a location? And if such, we need to get somebody on that.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of a dialogue. I would put more of the emphasis on the county. You know the locations in town, because I don't know if there's a space in the county building across the street that might be suitable versus something in the college. So I guess I'll work on
have somebody.
If we're gonna go with the August 28th date, if that's what we're gonna do, then I'll work with staff or the administrator and whoever she assigns. We'll get a location picked and get the notices published through all the different meetings.
That's 4 days.
Yes, it'll be 3 days for sure, and maybe 4 days. But we're gonna plan on the 4, or block out the 4. It all depends on how it goes, and again, this data collection will be kind of telling.
Does material have to stay in that room when we're not there?
Yes, it would be best, because we're going to have a number of computers set up. The computers can probably be removed, but things like projector screens, we'll probably have 2 projector screens and easels and flip charts and things of that nature. If that could all stay, that would make it a lot easier.
Any other discussion or questions at this point? All in favor of the date change, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay.
So as far as the next meeting of this committee, I guess it's scheduled for August 9th. I will be on vacation that day, so you'll have somebody else up here presenting to you on that date. But the plan is to give you a report on, because we'll have the opportunity then to go through all this data that we've got, and we'll give you an update on the status of that and some findings. We'll have probably some preliminary needs, like what direction this thing is going as far as the capacities of these facilities, and we should have a preliminary architectural program to discuss basically how big is the bread box that we'll be talking about. So those are the 3 things we'll be talking about the next meeting. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you might have of me. That's pretty much all I had for today.
I have a couple.
Yes.
With the concept of looking at the school buildings for potential juvenile needs, some of these things that eliminated some of these sites was inadequate for co-location. Does that put some of these sites back in play for just a jail facility or not?
Well, the ideal scenario would be a big site with an abandoned school right next to it. That would be perfect, and you never know what you're going to find. But I would say that chances are, if there's a school building utilized, my guess is the probability is pretty high. It would probably only be a juvenile transition center. But I don't know where these are, so maybe they're next door to each other, maybe not. But even if there's a short distance between them, because I think some of the things we're looking at sharing there's falls in 3 categories. One is mechanical electrical systems. So if you're in the same building, that's easy. If you're separated by a mile or half a mile, that's pretty difficult. Number 2 is food service and laundry. Well, you can transport food, if you're preparing food in the jail and transporting it to the juvenile transition center. If it's a short distance and there's a warming kitchen in the juvenile center, then maybe that works. And then the other is medical. We want to move maybe some medical staff back and forth between the facilities. You're going to have separate medical facilities in the facilities, but you move people back and forth, that resource. So we will be looking at it that way as, you know, are there continued efficiencies? Or, because there are some challenges because the menus are a little different in jail than they are in a juvenile facility. So how does that work? You know, is it easier to do it under one kitchen, or is it easier to do it under two? We're still going to investigate that. So, but all we can do is look at it and see what comes of it.
And the other thing I was reminded, and I think I read it in the newspaper the other day, there's an old hotel, the old Holiday Inn, that just got boarded up or something, and down the Seaway Drive, is that?
There's no tall ceilings.
No.
I wouldn't think.
Fair enough, I just thought of it. Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for the update. Agenda item number 4, other business from the committee. Does anyone have other business? We need to get into?
The information I've been receiving from a lot of citizens are just, it's unbelievable what they're thinking about what we're doing here. We need to get somebody to get this information from these meetings and everything else out to people. By some means. I mean, I had people saying we hired RQAW just to have them tell us we could put a juvenile transition to get jail together. You know, they're saying what a waste of money this is. They just don't realize what we're doing here. I'm just afraid we're going to have a hard time selling this to the public if we don't get them informed somehow. Just my thoughts on it. I'm sure everybody else is here probably legitimate thoughts.
Well, I think from our trip to Allegheny County, when we went down to Allegheny County, the one thing I really was impressed with is the charrette process. We can't be telling people anything until we have that process, because we're looking for people to come in and give their opinions and speak their pieces. And then it seems to me that then that would really begin to develop what we as a committee really want to do and what we're looking to do. I'm not sure we can tell them anything now.
Well, I think the one thing we should tell them is that no decisions have been made. There's been no price settled upon. There's been no decision that this is going to happen. There's a desire by a lot of people to see this happen, but there's been no talk of dollars and what it's going to cost or where it's going to be located or what it's going to look like. This is simply, we are in the exploratory stage. This is my opinion, that we are in exploratory stages of what's the most effective, most efficient, most cost efficient, most location efficient, needs efficient. If we do go forward with this, what's the best option that we have available? And we haven't discovered that yet because we haven't pulled it all together. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that needs to get out there. There has been no decision that this is in fact going to happen.
And I think too, just the process that we're using to get there, because there are those points that the public may then feel that they can provide input. If they understood where those points were, then it allows them to engage in the process. Just in terms of, I don't know whether we advertise who's on the Citizen Review Committee and if there would be any conversation that might go within communities about that. Just, I think all of those things are important, and we're comfortable with it, but when you don't know how it's working, then you fill in the blank for yourself, and it depends how much you trust as to either how close you are or how far off base you may be.
Other business, other discussion? Okay, agenda item number 5, public comment. And I have one request. Mr. Dan Mills.
Yeah, I appreciate it. His name is Dan Mills, 1817 Mills Avenue, 49445. Thanks for letting me speak. And appreciate the comments I just heard about sharing information with the public, because that's what I have to talk about. And I heard the word trust, and people fill in the blanks for themselves. And when people, only look to national trends and they see how actually in the jails around the country, programs aren't being enhanced. Actually, programming, and services of all sorts are being cut, and in an effort to make things more efficient, get costs down to zero if possible. Hence, not traveling to the courtroom to talk with the judge or the attorney, but have a flat screen and all that. So people are just wondering, does a new jail equate to better programming and better services and better, accommodation for natural and human rights and that sort of thing? Or is it just a bigger chicken box where you can lay more eggs, that sort of thing? And so people are left to fill in the blanks for themselves. Now, I was here at I attended, it's difficult to attend these meetings. I have to take afternoon off work to do it. But I attended the May 17th Citizens Review Committee meeting, and there were promises made to get information packets and information to the people on the committee. There was another committee meeting, I guess, after that one that was very poorly attended because people just didn't know there was a committee meeting. This previous meeting was poorly attended by the citizens because they thought the meeting had been canceled. Now, when I brought this up at a recent board meeting, we were told pretty much to get a Twitter account, and that way you can keep track of what's going on because the website was wrong. And the website was wrong several times this month. Things being discussed on that weren't on the agenda, things like that, meetings being canceled and then actually being held. And so anyway, we aren't now going to get Twitter accounts unless you take that website down. If we can believe that thing, then great. Anyway, another thing, at that committee meeting, and this is on a video I took when I was here, May 17th, this 2006 study was brought up and actually one of the citizens brought it up. What about this previous study? And the answer was, just caution, not any facts about it, but just to disregard that study because it was flawed somehow. And now you mentioned that today, and that you have that. I'm wondering if the citizens have that, because it would probably be interesting whether or not it's flawed. Maybe highlight the flaws, like the speaker did here. That's information. Anyway, so an information packet was promised to the citizens, and I'm wondering if that thing came forth. And another thing, the citizens are asking to know things like, we're going way back to the very start on this. The citizens are asking questions like, why are people held, 160 people in the basement of the county building? What are they there for? And the answer is 65% of them are like a pre-trial and stuff like that. So then the question is, people are asking, why are you having people in there if it's admittedly substandard and actually in violation of ordinances and things? Why do you have people cooped up in a basement like that if they're all pre-trial in the first place? And why do you have to have a bigger place if you can't maintain the one you have now? And the answer seems to be this is a revenue source for the county, that we're going to be looking for partnerships around the state, bring in people from all around the state and the region, and coop them up here and to generate revenue. This was the answer of the citizens, and it's on a videotape, it's online. And so I'm wondering, is this our focus? Are we making money off of incarceration? Or are we looking really to enhance the chances that these people will actually come on out of here? The kids, now I know there's a lot of kids and there's a lot of people that got to be locked up because they're a threat to society, and they have their rights too. But I'm wondering if this is really just a revenue source. Thanks. I hope that we can get the information packet that explains also why these people are in, percentages, how many of them are high security risks, how many of them are low security risks, and going home maybe, to work or going out to work during the daytime because they really have to be there. So do we have that information? And do we also have some kind of information that's laying out what kind of programs are going to be in place for these inmates? Thanks.
Well, I can respond to a couple of those immediately. A lot of the data that's being collected by the consultant right now is in regards to the current population and the nature of the charges and the nature of the pretrial population versus sentenced population. I will comment that the basement of the county building, as it's been referred to, which is the jail annex, is not in violation of any. We are inspected every year by the state of Michigan Department of Corrections. We have not been violated for substandard housing arrangements. There's recommendations about getting the showers fixed right away, but and such and things like that. But that all goes back to the entire infrastructure of the building that we're dealing with. Is we fix one shower and then another pipe burst down the line, and we fix another shower and another pipe burst. We're dealing with old infrastructure. But I do want to go on record on saying that we've never been cited for inadequate or unhealthy or anything in violation of state Department of Corrections standards for the jail. And those reports are all available. So I think there's a misperception out there that it's not a dungeon. It's not what I would like to see in terms of a housing facility, but it's not by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a pit in a prison. So some of the other things is that the 2006 needs assessment. I actually just got that today myself through an email that is going out to all committee members here, as well as the Citizens Committee. All members are going to be getting a copy of that. I don't know if we had plans to put it up on. Again, it's a multi-document study, so it's on there. Okay, so that is out there, and in regards to the juvenile population, I can't answer that. That's not my domain, so that's my comment. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just have one comment. I believe I was at the same meeting you were where you came to the podium and spoke about the meetings and there was some cancellations and so was some problems with some dates. However, you did omit stating today that the county administrator addressed that, said that those dates would be posted weekly on the county website, and I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, I have no other cards here, but if there's any other public comment from the audience, we'll entertain it. Otherwise, we'll go to the motion. Motion to adjourn.